Hi guys, Ciaran the Euro Courier, also known as Ciaran the Van Driver, who has appeared a number of times on the James O'Brien show. Last week, and I'm sorry I'm just raising this issue now, but last week he highlighted a massive problem as a result of Brexit, which is going to make life even more difficult for businesses that are reliant on the EU for goods. So as we know, the modus operandi of the Tory government is to offload responsibility onto others. We saw it during the pandemic. The public were blamed for rising cases when rules and guidance were either confusing or not strict enough. Then with Brexit, about a year before the UK left the transition period, people like Michael Gove and Boris Johnson were saying that there would be no disruption. Then about 6 months before the transition period ended, Gove in particular was warning businesses to prepare for problems and to make sure that they were ready for Brexit. He even went as far as to say that the government was ready, now UK businesses had to be prepared. Many British businesses couldn't properly prepare because they didn't know exactly what would happen. Many had never traded outside the EU, so they were unfamiliar with the requirements. Companies closed, and then others moved operations into the EU. They were even encouraged to do so by the Department of International Trade. Something else also happened as we approached the end of the Brexit transition period. Tory ministers were making promises they knew they couldn't or simply had no intention of keeping. 50,000 border staff were to be hired to make sure that port operations ran smoothly. This was a lie, of course, which has resulted in goods being waved through at the ports. And the government isn't carrying out sufficient checks for two reasons. One, they don't have the resources available, and this would result in massive delays. And second, carrying out sufficient checks would also cause delays, which would impact on consumers. And British consumers have begun to notice, for example, food going stale sooner than normal. And as about 40% of British food is imported, any delay will have an impact. So this brings us to Ciaran's tweet. He posts this important message from the UK authorities. It says that fines are going up for any vehicle that is caught carrying clandestine entrants into the UK from £2,000 to £10,000. So why the increase in the fine? Well, the government knows that they haven't the staff and the resources necessary to carry out the checks. They know that smuggling is rampant as well. But in order to save money on truly carrying out checks and dealing with the problem, they hope the chilling effect of a bigger fine will deter either accidental or willful carriers of smuggled migrants. Will this have the necessary effect? It's unlikely, but it may have an unintended consequence. If a driver from, say, Eastern Europe arrives in Calais, is waiting to board the ferry to cross the channel, there's a risk somebody will stow away on the truck. The driver then arrives in Britain and is checked by chance. They now receive a massive fine. Now, would this encourage drivers to continue to use the British route, even though they continue after all the problems of Brexit? What do you think? Also, the fine is likely to affect foreign drivers more than British ones, in turn harming an already limited number of operators into Britain, thus making trips to the UK more expensive, a cost that needs to be passed on to the final consumer. And this new fine will likely do little to discourage people who wish to arrive in the UK via this method, but instead will punish drivers and their companies in an already problematic environment. So instead of investing the resources necessary and attempting to provide both a secure entry and one that flows, responsibility has been outsourced once again. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.